I have always taken pride in the steady cadence of our life, a life built on routine, commitment, and the shared history that my wife, Laura, and I once promised to nurture. In the early days of our marriage, every sunrise brought with it fresh hope and endless possibility. I remember how her laughter would fill our modest home, and how every conversation between us shimmered with promise. But as the years passed, I began to notice subtle shifts in the very fabric of our relationship, shifts that hinted at a secret, hidden longing neither of us had dared to name. At first, it was merely the way Laura's eyes would drift toward the window during long, quiet evenings, as if she were searching for something elusive, something beyond the safe boundaries of our life. I told myself it was only the fatigue of daily routine, but deep in my bones, I sensed that our life had grown stale. The lively spark that once defined our connection was gradually being replaced by an unspoken melancholy, a weariness that seemed to settle into every corner of our home. One cold autumn evening, as rain lashed against the window panes and the wind whispered secrets through the trees, I returned home early from work. I found Laura sitting alone in our living room, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she held an old, framed photograph. It wasn't one of our happier times together, but an image of a woman whose face stirred a disquieting familiarity. The woman in the picture was Victoria, the ex-wife of my friend Daniel, whose past had always been shrouded in scandal and mystery. Though Victoria had long ceased to be an active presence in our lives, her name had lingered like a half-forgotten rumor, always hovering at the edge of conversation. As I watched her, my heart pounded with a mix of apprehension and sorrow. I could not understand why Laura's gaze would fix so intently on Victoria's image. In that moment, the boundaries of my secure existence began to crumble, and a sense of betrayal took root, a betrayal not of infidelity, perhaps, but of a love that had slowly withered under the weight of monotony. I remember thinking that perhaps the vibrant Laura I once knew was buried beneath years of routine and silent resignation. Days turned into weeks, and the tension in our home grew ever more palpable. I observed Laura in quiet moments, the way her eyes would sometimes glisten with unshed tears, the distant look in her eyes as she gazed at the shadows dancing across the walls. I would catch her murmuring softly to herself when she believed I was not watching, words that vanished before I could grasp their meaning. The more I observed, the more I feared that a hidden world, one filled with forbidden passion and unspoken desires, had begun to take shape behind her guarded smile. I started to question every aspect of our life together. Had I, in my quest to provide safety and stability, unknowingly created a cage that confined her spirit? Was it possible that in our pursuit of a predictable existence, I had stripped away the very spontaneity and wonder that had once defined our love? And then there was Victoria. The name, once only a whisper in conversation, now roared in my mind. I recalled fragments of stories I had heard about her, a past laden with scandal, heartbreak, and an intensity that defied the mundane. Somehow, Victoria had become a symbol of a life that Laura might have once dreamed of, a life full of passion and risk. Late one night, as I lay awake in the darkness with only the sound of my own racing thoughts for company, I began to piece together the fragments of a reality too painful to accept. I recalled how, on several occasions, I had found Laura lost in thought, almost as if she were communing with memories that were not our own. The image of her tracing the outline of Victoria's face in that old photograph haunted me relentlessly. It was as if the ex-wife, this enigmatic figure from another life, had taken root in her heart, offering a glimpse of something wild and free that I had never been able to provide. My inner turmoil grew with each passing day. I became consumed by the need to understand the source of Laura's growing detachment, even as a profound sense of dread settled over me. I wondered if I was witnessing the slow disintegration of a once unbreakable bond, a bond that now lay fractured by secrets and silent betrayals. Every glance, every gesture from Laura seemed to whisper of a hidden world that I was not privy to, a world where the past and present collided in a way that threatened to shatter everything I had built. In the quiet hours before dawn, as the darkness pressed in around me, I resolved to search for answers. I began by retracing the steps of our early courtship, poring over old letters, photographs, and mementos that once symbolized our shared joy. I sought to rediscover the vibrant spark that had defined our love, only to find that those memories now felt distant, almost like relics of a life that could never be reclaimed. The more I searched, the more I realized that the answers I sought might be found not in the pages of our history, but in the unspoken spaces between us, a space that now seemed filled with the ghost of Victoria. That realization was both terrifying and transformative. I understood that to salvage the remnants of our relationship, I would need to confront not only the changes in Laura but also the enigmatic past that had suddenly become so real. I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation, knowing that it might force me to face truths I had long been afraid to acknowledge. The safe, predictable life I had built was now under siege from an insidious enemy, one that wore the face of forbidden passion and carried the echoes of a scandalous past. As the first light of morning crept through the curtains, I felt an overwhelming sense of foreboding. The tranquility of our home, once a testament to our shared commitment, now felt like a fragile illusion, one that could shatter at any moment under the weight of unspoken secrets. I realized that the time had come to confront the hidden forces at work in our marriage. My heart ached with the knowledge that the woman I loved was drifting into a realm of passion and desire that I could neither understand nor control. Thus began a journey into the depths of our shared past, a journey that promised to expose the raw, painful truth behind Laura's distant glances and whispered sighs. I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with heartache and betrayal, but it was a path I had to tread if I were to reclaim the love that was slipping away. In that moment of quiet resolve, I vowed to face the storm head-on, even if it meant dismantling everything I had once held dear. I took a deep breath and stepped into the uncertain light of the new day, carrying with me the hope that by unearthing the hidden past, I might find a way to mend the fractures in our life. Yet, even as I embraced that resolve, a small, lingering doubt remained, one that questioned whether our love, so carefully constructed over the years, could ever survive the revelations that were about to come. In the weeks that followed that fateful autumn morning, the subtle signs of change in our home became impossible to ignore. I began to notice a new tension in the air, a tension that seemed to draw Laura farther away into a realm where the past mingled with a forbidden present. Every quiet evening, as I sat alone in our study, I could almost hear the echoes of secrets and whispered confessions reverberating from the walls. I found myself retracing every conversation and every stolen glance, desperate to find a clue that would explain the growing distance between us. It wasn't long before I discovered evidence that shattered my complacency, a series of hidden messages on Laura's phone, fragments of text that hinted at clandestine meetings and hushed promises exchanged with none other than Victoria. The realization that my wife was drawn into a secret world filled me with both fury and profound sorrow. Late one rainy night, after I had spent hours wrestling with my inner demons, I resolved to follow the trail. My heart pounded as I scrolled through the incriminating messages, each word confirming my worst fears. There were references to secret rendezvous at a quiet cafe on the outskirts of town, and messages that spoke of a passion so intense it defied the monotony of everyday life. With every new detail, I felt as though the foundation of our marriage was crumbling beneath me. I remember one message in particular, a message that spoke of the irresistible pull of Victoria's memory, a memory that had awakened a desire in Laura I had never imagined existed. It was as if the forbidden allure of that mysterious ex-wife had become a beacon of hope for Laura, a chance to experience something wild and unpredictable in a life that had grown dangerously predictable. The words cut through me like a knife, and I was forced to confront the painful truth. My wife was falling into the arms of a past that was not hers, and in doing so, she was betraying the sacred vows we had once made. In the days that followed, I began to notice subtle changes in Laura's behavior. She would leave the house at odd hours without explanation, and when I asked about her whereabouts, her answers were vague and filled with hesitation. I started to piece together a timeline, a series of events that painted a damning picture of a secret romance that had taken root in our midst. Each new revelation left me feeling more isolated and adrift, as if the life I had so meticulously built was dissolving before my eyes. The once comforting routine of our evenings was now punctuated by long periods of silence, a silence heavy with the weight of unspoken guilt and remorse. I would lie awake at night, haunted by images of Laura laughing softly in the dim glow of streetlights as she met with someone whose name I dared not speak aloud, Victoria. The knowledge that my wife was seeking solace in the forbidden warmth of another woman sent a shiver down my spine. It was as though a part of her had awakened, a part that I had never seen before and that now belonged to a world I could neither reach nor understand. Driven by a mixture of despair and determination, I resolved to confront the truth. I began to document every detail, every timestamp, and every location mentioned in those hidden messages. I became a silent observer of a drama unfolding right before my eyes, a drama in which I was both the unwilling victim and the desperate seeker of truth. The process was excruciating, each new piece of evidence reinforcing the sense of betrayal that had taken root in my heart. I often wondered if, in her search for passion and freedom, Laura had found in Victoria a kindred spirit, someone whose own life had been marked by scandal and heartache. Perhaps, in the secret glances and whispered words they shared, Laura had discovered the possibility of a life where rules were meant to be broken and boundaries were meant to be crossed. The thought was both liberating and devastating. It forced me to confront the possibility that the love we once cherished might have been nothing more than an illusion, one that had been shattered by the relentless pull of a past that refused to remain buried. I recalled the long evenings when we would sit together, wrapped in the comfortable silence of familiarity, never suspecting that beneath that veneer lay a world of hidden desires. Now, every moment was tainted by the awareness that something vital had been lost, a vital spark that had given our relationship its light. I questioned every decision I had made, every moment of complacency that might have contributed to this heartbreaking divide. Had I, in my relentless pursuit of stability, inadvertently left Laura with a void that only the thrill of the forbidden could fill? As the days turned into weeks, the reality of the situation became impossible to ignore. I felt as though I were standing at the edge of an abyss, peering into a darkness that threatened to consume everything I held dear. The secret romance between Laura and Victoria was no longer confined to the shadows. It had burst forth into the open, leaving me with a raw, aching emptiness that defied description. I could no longer deny the truth that lay before me, a truth that demanded confrontation, however painful it might be. In the quiet solitude of one particularly bitter night, I resolved that I could no longer remain a silent witness to my own unraveling. With a heart heavy with trepidation and a mind tormented by conflicting emotions, I prepared myself for the inevitable confrontation. I knew that to reclaim any semblance of the life we once shared, I had to force the hidden past into the light, no matter the cost. The day of reckoning arrived with a chill that seemed to seep into my very soul. I had spent countless nights agonizing over the decision, and now the time had come to confront Laura with all that I had learned. My heart hammered in my chest as I approached our living room, a space that had once been filled with laughter and warmth, but now felt like the arena for a battle I was desperate to win. When Laura returned home that evening, I could see the tension in her eyes, a flicker of guilt that betrayed her calm facade. I greeted her in a tone that belied the storm raging inside me, and as soon as we were alone, I broached the subject that had haunted me for weeks. "Laura," I began, my voice wavering with both anger and sorrow, "we need to talk about what's been happening." Her eyes widened, and for a long, agonizing moment, neither of us spoke. I recounted the messages, the secret meetings, every detail I had painstakingly uncovered. With each word, I felt a mixture of heartbreak and determination surge within me. I demanded to know how it had come to be that the woman I loved was entangled in a forbidden romance with Victoria, the woman whose very name had become a symbol of betrayal and mystery. Laura's silence was at first deafening, then it slowly gave way to a trembling confession. In halting words, she admitted that she had indeed met with Victoria, initially in search of escape from the monotony that had imprisoned her, and later, as an expression of a long-dormant desire for passion and change. Her confession was raw and filled with regret, yet tinged with a passion I had never seen in her before. She explained that Victoria represented a part of her that had always yearned for freedom, a side of her that felt stifled by the predictable rhythm of our life together. As she spoke, I could see the internal conflict in her eyes, a battle between the love she once had for me and the irresistible allure of a world that promised excitement and renewal. My heart ached as I realized that the safe, predictable home I had built could no longer contain the wild spirit that was Laura. Anger and sorrow warred within me. I demanded to know when this had begun, how deeply she had fallen into this clandestine affair. Laura's voice trembled as she recalled the moments of stolen intimacy, the whispered promises shared in dimly lit corners of quiet cafes. She admitted that what had started as a brief escape had grown into something more, a dangerous entanglement that now threatened to destroy everything we had built together. I felt as if the ground had vanished beneath me. Every word of her confession was like a hammer shattering the fragile illusion of our marital bliss. In that heated moment, as emotion surged and tears welled in both our eyes, I realized that there was no simple path to redemption. The betrayal was not just about infidelity, it was a revelation of a hidden self that had long been buried beneath years of routine. I listened, torn between the urge to lash out in anger and the desperate need to understand the forces that had driven her to seek solace in another's arms. The truth, as painful as it was, now stood naked before me, forcing me to confront the reality that our love was at a crossroads. I demanded answers that night, asking Laura if she ever truly loved me or if the passion she felt for Victoria had eclipsed every memory of our past. Her words, soft and filled with regret, were a painful mixture of longing and apology. She explained that while she still cared for me, the spark that once defined our love had faded into a slow-burning ember, replaced by a yearning for the intensity that Victoria's presence had awakened. Every sentence, every tear that fell, added to the overwhelming sense of loss, a loss that I feared might be irreparable. For what felt like hours, we talked, argued, and cried, laying bare every hidden truth, every secret that had festered beneath the surface of our lives. In that long, agonizing confrontation, I came to understand that our marriage was not simply a collection of shared routines, but a complex tapestry of desires, regrets, and unfulfilled dreams. The revelation of Laura's clandestine romance with Victoria was a betrayal that struck at the very core of my identity, leaving me to question whether the love we once celebrated could ever be restored. As the night deepened and the conversation wound down into a heavy silence, I felt both a crushing grief and a strange sense of relief. At last, the hidden past had been exposed, and the weight of secrets was no longer mine alone to bear. Yet even as I grappled with the raw pain of betrayal, I sensed that this confrontation, while devastating, was also a necessary step toward understanding and, perhaps, eventual healing. I did not know what the future held for us, or if our shattered bond could ever be pieced back together. But in that moment of vulnerability, as the truth lay bare between us, I resolved to confront the consequences of this forbidden romance head-on. I knew that the road to redemption would be long and fraught with heartache, but I also knew that denial was no longer an option. I had to accept the complexity of our love, even if it meant acknowledging that the past, with all its scandal and hidden desires, had irrevocably altered our lives. In the quiet aftermath of our confrontation, as I sat alone in the dim light of dawn, I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The echoes of that painful night would resonate in every memory, every whispered word, and every tear that fell in the days to come. And though the betrayal had cut deeply, I also understood that truth, however brutal, was the only path to reclaiming a semblance of what we once had. In the weeks that followed our heart-wrenching confrontation, the fallout from the revelation of Laura's secret romance with Victoria swept through our lives like a tidal wave. I found myself caught in a maelstrom of conflicting emotions, grief, anger, despair, and, strangely, a glimmer of acceptance. Every day felt like a struggle to reconcile the man I had been with the man I was forced to become in the wake of betrayal. The once familiar corridors of our home were now haunted by memories and whispered echoes of the past. I wandered from room to room, haunted by the sight of Laura's belongings and the remnants of happier times that now seemed like distant dreams. The intimacy we had shared had been reduced to silence, and every familiar smile was tainted by the knowledge of secrets that had forever altered our bond. I was left with an aching emptiness, a void that no amount of routine or familiar comfort could fill. In the aftermath of the confrontation, Laura and I attempted to navigate the shattered remnants of our marriage. There were moments of tentative conversation, fragile attempts at reconciliation that were quickly drowned out by the weight of unspoken guilt and sorrow. I spent long hours in the study, poring over old photographs and mementos, trying to piece together the fragments of a love that had once seemed invincible. I questioned every decision I had made, wondering if my quest for stability had unwittingly driven Laura into the arms of a past that she could no longer resist. Yet amid the despair, I found myself grappling with a deeper truth. The betrayal, painful as it was, had forced me to confront the hidden layers of our shared history. I began to understand that our love was not defined solely by the comfort of routine, but also by the passion, the risk, and even the pain that had once made it vibrant and real. In accepting this painful complexity, I slowly discovered that healing, though arduous, might be possible. One quiet evening, as rain droned softly against the window and the world outside seemed muted by sorrow, I sat down with Laura for what would be our final, raw conversation. In that dim light, with truth laid bare between us, we spoke of regrets and lost opportunities, of the mistakes we had made in our relentless pursuit of safety. Laura's voice trembled as she admitted that the allure of Victoria had awakened in her a yearning for something wild, something that our carefully constructed life had long denied her. I listened with a heavy heart, feeling both the sting of betrayal and the bittersweet memory of a love that had once been our sanctuary. We acknowledged that the path ahead would be fraught with difficulty. There would be no simple restoration of what we once had. Instead, there would be a long, uncertain journey of rebuilding trust and learning to live with the echoes of our hidden past. I realized that while the pain of her betrayal would always be a part of me, so too would be the memories of what we had shared, the laughter, the dreams, and even the quiet moments of tenderness that had defined our early years together. In the weeks that followed that final conversation, I sought solace in solitude and reflection. I took long walks under leaden skies, letting the cool air clear my mind as I tried to come to terms with the irreversible changes in our lives. With each step, I felt the weight of the past slowly begin to lift, replaced by a cautious hope that, in time, we might find a way to redefine our relationship, even if it meant accepting that nothing would ever be the same. As I continued to reflect, I recognized that the hidden past was not merely a chapter of scandal and betrayal, but also a mirror that revealed the complexities of the human heart. In the interplay of light and darkness, passion and regret, I found a profound truth. Love is as fragile as it is fierce, and sometimes the path to redemption is paved with the very pain we try so hard to escape. The journey ahead was uncertain, yet I resolved to embrace it with an open heart, acknowledging that every tear shed, every word spoken in anguish, was a step toward a deeper understanding of myself and the love that had once defined our lives. Now, as I sit here in the quiet aftermath, I know that our story will forever be marked by the echoes of that forbidden romance and the secrets that were brought into the light. I do not know whether Laura and I will ever fully repair the damage that has been done. The future remains unwritten, a tapestry of possibility and heartbreak intertwined. But I do know one thing with absolute clarity. In facing the hidden past, we have uncovered a truth that is as painful as it is liberating, a truth that challenges the very nature of love, loyalty, and the cost of forbidden desire. In this final reckoning, I accept that the path to healing will be long and uncertain. Yet I also embrace the hope that comes from the willingness to confront the darkness within, to allow even the most painful secrets to guide us toward a future where forgiveness, however distant, may one day take root. The hidden past, with all its scandal and sorrow, will always be a part of who I am, a reminder that even in the face of profound betrayal, there remains the possibility of renewal.